Hello, the best. In the last episode, 30 Years of Gaming, I told you about what technologies became relevant in 1992 and also showed you the top 20 games of this year. If you haven't watched the previous episodes, you can find the link to the playlist in the video description. Well, today we'll talk about how 1993 affected the gaming industry and what games were the best this year. Make tea, take cookies, thumbs up and subscribe to this channel, and let's dive into this wonderful world of games together. In 1993, Panasonic partnered with Goldstar and Sanyo to release the 3DO 32-bit home video game console. It was the first console in my life that used a CD-ROM, and I also played Road Rash for the first time on it. The idea of creating 3DO belongs to the entrepreneur Trip Hawkins, who is also the founder of EA Games. At the time of release, the console had very advanced hardware capabilities, but due to the high price and the glut of the market with analogs, 3DO as a project will live only 3 years. In the same year, Commodore released the Amiga CD32, 32-bit home game console. However, Commodore defaulted on the use of the CAD track patent, resulting in a lawsuit and a federal judge's ruling to bar Commodore from importing any product into the United States. Shortly thereafter, the bankruptcy proceedings of the company began. In record time, just a month after the CD32 hit the market, Commodore announced the end of sales and warranty service for the product. Atari also tried to grab a piece of the pie by releasing the Atari Jaguar, which they touted as the first 64-bit console, which was a lie. The CPU and GPU of the set-top box had a 32-bit architecture, only the TOM Graphics coprocessor was 64-bit. A limited number of games were released for the console, most of which were of poor quality, which negatively affected the sales of the console, and soon Atari had to leave the console market. Nintendo, in turn, did not enter the race of technological consoles, and in '93 made a redesign of the Nintendo Entertainment System, placing the cartridge slot on top and not in front as it was before. And what are the best games this year? I'll tell you right now. Sneakers creaking on the floor, our top opens NBA Jam Basketball Arcade. NBA Jam is a basketball video game developed and published by Midway for arcades in 1993. It is the first entry in the NBA Jam series and is one of the first real playable basketball arcade games and sports games to feature NBA licensed teams and players and their real digitized likenesses. A key feature of NBA Jam is the exaggerated nature of the play. Players can jump extremely high and make slam dunks that defy both human capabilities and the laws of physics. The NBA initially reacted negatively to the game, feeling that an arcade game was wrong for the branding. However, after a second pitch, they eventually became convinced of its potential. The game became exceptionally popular and generated a significant amount of money for arcades after its release. In the United States, it topped the monthly replay charts for upright arcade cabinets from April 1993 through summer to October 1993.
Rejected! Tippin!
Mega Man 6, known in Japan as Rockman 6, the greatest battle in history, takes 19th place. It is the 6th installment in the original Mega Man series. It was originally released in Japan by Capcom in 1993 and in North America by Nintendo in 1994. Mega Man 6's story takes place after the events of Mega Man 5. The player takes control of Mega Man to complete a series of side-scrolling platform stages littered with smaller robot enemies and occasional larger mini-bosses. The player's primary method of attack is the Mega Buster Cannon, which can be charged for more powerful shots. At the end of each of the initial 8 stages is a boss battle, where the player inherits that Robot Master's unique master weapon if successful. These 8 levels can be completed in any order, although all Robot Masters are weak to a specific master weapon, adding an element of strategy to the order chosen by the player. Mega Man 6 has enjoyed a favorable reception from gaming publications and websites. The game is listed by IGN as the 58th best game on the NES. Zombies Ate My Neighbors hits the 18th position in my top. Zombies Ate My Neighbors is a run-and-gun video game developed by LucasArts and published by Konami for the Super NES and Sega Mega Drive Genesis consoles in 1993. 1 or 2 players take control of protagonists in order to rescue the titular neighbors from monsters often seen in horror movies. A player can choose between Zeke and Julie characters or play both in a 2-player mode. They navigate suburban neighborhoods, shopping malls, pyramids, haunted castles, and other areas, destroying a variety of horror movie monsters, including vampires, werewolves, aliens, giant worms, mummies, chainsaw-wielding maniacs, and others. In each of the 48 stages, which include 7 optional bonus levels, the players must rescue numerous types of neighbors, including barbecue chefs, teachers, babies, tourists, archaeologists, soldiers, dogs, and cheerleaders. Once all neighbors on a level have been killed by zombies or saved by the players touching them, a door opens that will take the player to the next stage. Although not an immediate success, Zombies Ate My Neighbors became a cult classic years after its release. Upon the game's release for the Wii Virtual Console, Zombies Ate My Neighbors received immense praise and earned an Editor's Choice Award from IGN. 17th place goes to Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine is a falling block puzzle game developed by Compile and published by Sega. It was released for the Sega Genesis, Mega Drive in North America and Europe in November 1993 and ported to the Game Gear in 1993 and Master System in 1994. The game is a westernized version of Puyo Puyo falling block puzzle game from 1991 and replaces its characters with those from the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, primarily the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog animated series. The game is set on the planet Mobius, which is inhabited by bean-like creatures. Dr. Robotnik conceives of a plan to bring terror to the world by kidnapping the citizens of Beanville and turning them into robot slaves, and eventually creating an army that will help him rid the planet of fun and joy. In scenario mode, the player plays against 13 increasingly challenging computer opponents. The Game Gear and Master System versions feature an additional mode, Puzzle Mode, in which players must attempt to clear predetermined sets of beans. Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine received generally positive reviews. It holds an average score of 75% at Game Rankings, based on an aggregate of 5 reviews. Secret of Mana comes out of the magical forest straight to the 16th position of my top. Secret of Mana, originally released in Japan as Seiken Densetsu 2, is a 1993 action role-playing game developed and published by Square, now Square Enix, for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It is the sequel to the 1991 game Seiken Densetsu, released in North America as Final Fantasy Adventure, and in Europe as Mystic Quest, and it was the first Seiken Densetsu title to be marketed as part of the Mana series rather than the Final Fantasy series. Set in a high fantasy universe, the game follows 3 heroes as they attempt to prevent an empire from conquering the world with the power of an ancient flying fortress. Like many other role-playing games of the 16-bit era, Secret of Mana displays a top-down perspective in which the player characters navigate the terrain and fight off hostile creatures. Secret of Mana was awarded Game of the Month in December 1993 and Best Role-Playing Game of 1993 by Electronic Gaming Monthly. The Space Fighter lands in position 15 with Star Fox on board. Star Fox is a rail shooter video game developed by Nintendo and Argonaut Software and published by Nintendo for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. This game takes place in a fictional planetary system called the Lylat System, which is inhabited by anthropomorphic animal species such as foxes, frogs, birds, rabbits, and apes. The player, playing as Fox, must navigate spacecraft and Arwing through environments while various enemies attack them. Along the way, various power-ups are placed in the stage to help the player. The player receives a score at the end of each level based on how many enemies have been destroyed and how well the player has defended their teammates. At the end of each level, there is a boss that the player must defeat before progressing to the next level. Star Fox was a commercial success upon release. It topped the Japanese Famitsu sales charts from February to March 1993, selling 325,000 units in Japan by December 1993. Nintendo sold more than 1.7 million units in Japan and the United States by the end of March 1993, becoming the fastest-selling video game launch in North America up until then. Fourteenth place goes to innovational SimCity 2000. SimCity 2000 is a city-building simulation video game jointly developed by Will Wright and Fred Haslam of Maxis. SimCity 2000 was a major extension of the SimCity concept. It had a near isometric dimetric view instead of overhead. Land could have different elevations, and underground layers were introduced for water pipes and subways. New types of facilities include prisons, schools, libraries, museums, marinas, hospitals, and arcologies. Players can build highways, roads, bus depots, railway tracks, subways, train depots, and zone land for seaports and airports. You can build highways to neighboring cities to increase trade and the population. The game also included several playable scenarios in which the player must deal with a disaster and rebuild the city to meet a set of victory conditions. In the United States, SimCity 2000 was the 9th best-selling computer game between 1993 and 1999, selling 1.4 million units. The game achieved global sales of 3.4 million units across all platforms by January 2002. The Bewitching and Paranormal Sins of the Fathers takes, who would have thought, 13th place. Gabriel Knight, Sins of the Fathers is a 1993 point-and-click adventure game developed and published by Sierra Online for MS-DOS, Macintosh, and Windows, and released on December 17, 1993. The game takes place within a world where supernatural forces, both good and evil, have existed throughout human history, with any becoming a threat to humanity being combated by people who specialize in fighting such powers. The story incorporates the mythology, history, and background of voodoo, both the Americanized version found in Louisiana and the West African version, mixing real elements with a fictionalized version that is central to the game's plot. While its story unfolds over a linear sequence of chapters, each covering the course of a day, which have a required set of actions that must be performed to make progress, gameplay is mostly non-linear and features additional optional actions that can be conducted, some of which provide further insight into the background of the story and its setting. In June 1994, Gabriel Knight won Computer Gaming World's Adventure Game of the Year award.
The word voodoo may sound familiar to you.
12th place of my top goes to a game named Myst. Myst is a graphic adventure puzzle video game designed by the Miller brothers, Robin and Rand. The game released in 1993 for the Macintosh. Myst's gameplay consists of a first-person journey through an interactive world. Players can interact with specific objects on some screens by clicking or dragging them. The player moves by clicking on locations shown on the screen. The scene then crossfades into another frame, and the player can explore the new area. Players assume the role of an unnamed person who stumbles across an unusual book titled Myst. The player reads the book and discovers a detailed description of an island world called Myst. Placing their hand on the last page, the player is whisked away to the world described and is left with no choice but to explore the island. The player is provided with very little backstory at the beginning of the game, and no obvious goals or objectives are laid out. This means that players must simply begin to explore. There are no obvious enemies, no physical violence, no time limit to complete the game, and no threat of dying at any point. The game unfolds at its own pace and is solved through a combination of patience, observation, and logical thinking. Wired and the New York Times were among the publications that pointed to Myst as evidence that video games could, in fact, evolve into an art form. GameSpot's Jeff Sengstack wrote that Myst is an immersive experience that draws you in and won't let you go. Super Street Fighter II: The New Challengers takes 11th place. This is the 4th game in the Street Fighter II. It refines and balances the existing character roster from the previous versions and introduces 4 new characters. All 12 World Warriors from the previous Street Fighter II games return, many with basic and special techniques refined to adjust the overall balance. Some of the characters received new special techniques such as Ryu's Fire Hadouken, a flaming Shoryuken for Ken, Zangief's Atomic Buster, and M. Bison's Devil Reverse. 4 newcomers are introduced. T-Hawk, a Native American warrior from Mexico whose ancestral homeland was taken from him by Shadaloo. Fei Long, a Hong Kong movie star who wishes to test his martial arts against real opponents. BJ, a kickboxing musician from Jamaica seeking inspiration for his next song. And Cammy, a 19-year-old female Special Forces agent from England with a mysterious past tied to M. Bison. 8 opponents are chosen at random, followed by the 4 Shadaloo bosses. Super Street Fighter II: The New Challengers became the 6th highest grossing arcade game of 1994 in Japan. Before we move on to the top 10 games of 1993, let's recall a few games not included in the top, but worthy of mention. Super Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars X-Wing, RoboCop vs. the Terminator, Prince of Persia 2: The Shadow and the Flame, DuckTales 2, Battletoads and Double Dragon, Simon the Sorcerer,
Dear. Oh dear.
Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, X-Men, Virtua Fighter, The Lost Vikings, Duke Nukem 2. I hope that everyone found their favorite game here. And we are going to the top 10 games in 1993. Platformer Aladdin flies on the 10th place on a magic carpet. It is developed and published in 1993 by Capcom for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, based on the 1992 animated Disney film of the same name. Aladdin is a side-scrolling platform game in which the player controls the main character through several stages taking place throughout the city of Agrabah. Within each stage, Aladdin defeats foes by jumping on them or disorienting them by throwing apples, while avoiding dangerous obstacles. Most stages contain a treasure chest holding a scarab that flies about for a few seconds. If the player collects it before it disappears, they will access a bonus stage in which they spin a wheel that allows Genie to grant them extra lives and other special bonuses. The Escape from the Cave of Wonders and the Carpet Ride with Princess Jasmine are both stages in which the player rides the magic carpet through self-scrolling stages. In the United Kingdom, Aladdin was the top-selling SNES game in December 1993. Electronic Gaming Monthly's 4 reviewers scored the Super NES version 8, 8, 9, and 8 out of 10, adding up to 33 out of 40. Another one Mega Man game in this top goes to 9th place. Mega Man X is an action platform video game developed and published by Capcom for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It was the first Mega Man game for the 16-bit console. Mega Man X takes place in an unspecified time during the 22nd century and approximately 100 years after the original Mega Man series. A human archaeologist named Dr. Kane discovers the ruins of a robotics research facility that had once been operated by the legendary robot designer Dr. Thomas Light. Among the ruins, Kane finds a large capsule which contains a highly advanced robot with human-level intelligence and emotions and even free will, the likes of which the world has never seen before. Kane spends the next several months studying the robot, who is named X. Kane decides to duplicate X and, within several months, completes the first replicate android or Reploid, a robot who can think, feel, learn, and grow exactly like a human. Within the year, the design is standardized and Reploids are mass-produced. However, with the free will given to a Reploid comes the possibility of criminal activity. Such rogue Reploids are branded as mavericks by law-abiding citizens. Mega Man X has been widely acclaimed by critics since its release. Gaming magazines in the United States and Europe consistently lauded the game's visuals, audio, control, and overall gameplay. Game players summarized Mega Man X as a near-perfect cart with classic gameplay, excellent graphics and sound, and tons of hidden items and power-ups. Sonic the Hedgehog CD runs to 8th place. It is a 1993 platform game developed and published by Sega for the Sega CD. Sonic CD is a side-scrolling platform game similar to the original Sonic the Hedgehog. Players control Sonic the Hedgehog as he ventures to stop his nemesis Dr. Robotnik from obtaining the magical time stones and conquering a little planet. Like previous games, Sonic can destroy enemies and objects by rolling into a ball and collects rings as a form of health. Sonic can also perform a spin dash and a super peel out, both of which increase his speed. The game has 7 levels. Each round is split into 3 zones, the third of which ends in a boss fight against Robotnik. Sonic CD is differentiated from other Sonic games through its time travel game mechanic, which allows players to access different versions of levels set in the past, present, and future. He travels through time by hitting signs labeled past or future, maintaining his speed afterward. The Sega CD version sold more than 1.5 million copies, making it the system's bestseller. In the United Kingdom, it was the top-selling Mega CD game in December 1993. The legendary Kirby's Adventure is in the 7th place. Kirby's Adventure is a 1993 platform game developed by HAL Laboratory and published by Nintendo for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Like its predecessor Kirby's Dream Land, Kirby's Adventure is a 2D side-scrolling platform game. In the game's scenario, an evil entity named Nightmare corrupts the Fountain of Dreams, which provides restful sleep to the residents of Dreamland. The game consists of 41 levels across 7 worlds, each containing a lobby with doors leading to 4 to 5 regular levels, a boss fight, and a warp star door which enables Kirby to travel back to previous worlds. Most worlds also contain minigames which allow Kirby to gain extra lives, museums where Kirby may easily gain certain powers, and arenas where Kirby must battle with a miniboss to win health and allow him to copy the boss's special ability. Most aspects of Kirby's Adventure were well received in contemporary reviews, and critics agreed that it was an improvement over Kirby's Dream Land. Some of the most common highlights by reviewers were the game's originality with its new copy ability, and unique enemy designs, the size and variety of the levels, the tight controls, and the quality and cuteness of the graphics and animation. Sixth place in my top goes to Sam and Max Hit the Road. Sam and Max Hit the Road is a graphic adventure video game released by LucasArts during the company's adventure games era. The game was originally released for MS-DOS in 1993 and for macOS in 1995. Sam and Max, the Freelance Police, are 2 comic book characters created by Steve Perso who act as private detectives and vigilantes. The player uses Sam to explore the pre-rendered cartoon environments of the game and solve a series of puzzles using a simple point-and-click interface. It is a 2D adventure game where the player controls the actions of Sam from a third-person perspective. The game's puzzles have logical solutions, although a number of them have far-fetched solutions due to the game's cartoon setting. Sam and Max received a favorable reception from the gaming industry's press, holding a rating of 84% on the review aggregator site Game Rankings. The game was one of 4 nominees for the 1994 Annie Award in the category Best Animated CD-ROM. In 1994, PC Gamer US named Sam and Max the 8th best computer game ever.
Too bad we can't reach it from this side of the deck.
The top 5 best games in 1993 is opened by Super Mario All-Stars. Super Mario All-Stars is a compilation of platform games for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It contains remakes of Nintendo's 4 Super Mario games released for the Nintendo Entertainment System and the Famicom Disk System, Super Mario Bros., Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, Super Mario Bros. 2, and Super Mario Bros. 3. As in the original games, players control the Italian plumber Mario and his brother Luigi through themed worlds, collecting power-ups, avoiding obstacles, and finding secrets. The games in Super Mario All-Stars are updated to take advantage of the 16-bit hardware of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. The updates range from remastered soundtracks to revamped graphics and the addition of parallax scrolling. All-Stars includes the option to save player progress, which the original games lack. Critics praised the collection's games as excellent remakes, stating they aged well and appreciating the effort that went into retrofitting them for the SNES. Breaking through monster dungeons, The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening comes in at number 4. The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening is a 1993 action-adventure game developed and published by Nintendo for the Game Boy. It is the first installment in the Legend of Zelda series for a handheld game console. Like most games in the Legend of Zelda series, Link's Awakening is an action-adventure game focused on exploration and combat. Unlike most The Legend of Zelda titles, Link's Awakening is set outside the Kingdom of Hyrule. The player traverses the overworld of Koholint Island while fighting monsters and exploring underground dungeons. The island, though small, contains a large number of secrets and interconnected pathways. Dungeons steadily become larger and more difficult and feature nightmare boss characters that the player must defeat, taking different forms in each dungeon and getting harder to defeat each time. Link's Awakening was critically acclaimed and holds an average score of 90% on aggregate site game rankings. The Washington Post's Chip Carter declared that Nintendo had created a legend that fits in the palm of your hand and praised its portability and depth. One of the greatest adventure quests ever, called Day of the Tentacle, opens the top 3 of 1993. Day of the Tentacle, also known as Maniac Mansion 2 Day of the Tentacle, is a 1993 graphic adventure game developed and published by LucasArts. It is the sequel to the 1987 game Maniac Mansion. The plot follows Bernard Bernoulli and his friends Hoji and Laverne as they attempt to stop the evil purple tentacle, a sentient, disembodied tentacle, from taking over the world. The player takes control of the trio and solves puzzles while using time travel to explore different periods of history. 5 years after the events of Maniac Mansion, Purple Tentacle, a mutant monster and lab assistant created by mad scientist Dr. Fred Edison, drinks toxic sludge from a river behind Dr. Fred's laboratory. The sludge causes him to grow a pair of flipper-like arms, develop vastly increased intelligence, and have a thirst for global domination. Day of the Tentacle has been featured regularly in lists of top games. In 1994, PC Gamer US named Day of the Tentacle the 46th best computer game ever. In June 1994, it and Gabriel Knight, Sins of the Fathers, won Computer Gaming World's Adventure Game of the Year award. Adventure Gamers included the game as the top entry on its 20 greatest adventure games of all time list in 2004 and placed it 6th on its top 100 all-time adventure games in 2011.
We're
some kind of monster, dudes.
Second place and well-deserved silver goes to the phenomenal fighting game Mortal Kombat 2. Mortal Kombat 2 is a 1993 arcade fighting game originally produced by Midway for the arcades in 1993. Following his failure to defeat Liu Kang in the previous Mortal Kombat tournament, the evil Shang Tsung begs his master Shao Kahn, supreme ruler of Outworld, and the surrounding kingdoms, to spare his life. He tells Shao Kahn that if they hold the next Mortal Kombat tournament in Outworld, the Earthrealm warriors must travel away from home to attend. Kahn agrees to this plan and restores Shang Tsung's youth and martial arts prowess. He then extends the invitation to the Thunder God and Earthrealm's protector, Raiden, who gathers his warriors and takes them into Outworld. The game marked the introduction of multiple fatalities as well as additional, non-lethal finishing moves to the franchise, babalities, turning the opponent into a crying baby, friendships, a non-malicious interaction, such as dancing or giving a gift to the defeated opponent, and additional stage-specific fatalities, the victor uppercutting their opponent into an abyss below, spikes in the ceiling, or a pool of acid in the background. Finishing moves cannot be performed either by or against the boss or secret characters. According to the project's lead programmer Ed Boon, Mortal Kombat 2 was intended to look different than the original MK and had everything they wanted to put into MK but did not have time for. To create the character animations for the game, actors were placed in front of a gray background and performed the motions, which were recorded on videotape. Mortal Kombat 2 proved to be an enormous commercial success and even a cultural phenomenon. WMS Industries, owner of Midway at the time, reported its 1993 sales in the quarter ending December 31st rose to $101 million from $86 million and said much of its revenue gain was related to the sale of the arcade version of MK2. It went on to become America's highest-grossing arcade game of 1994 according to the Amusement and Music Operators Association. Mortal Kombat 2 was considered an arcade game of the year, taking over from the original Mortal Kombat.
Come here! Come here! Oh.
And the nomination for the best game of 1993 goes to the brutal, hardcore, and legendary first-person shooter, Doom. It is developed by ID Software in 1993 for MS-DOS. Players assume the role of a space marine, popularly known as Doomguy, fighting their way through hordes of invading demons from hell. ID Software began developing Doom after the release of their previous FPS, Wolfenstein 3D. The first episode, comprising 9 levels, was distributed freely as shareware. The full game, with 2 further episodes, was sold via mail order. Doom is divided into 3 episodes: Knee Deep in the Dead, The Shores of Hell, and Inferno. The campaign contains very few plot elements, with the minimal story instead given in the instruction manual, and in short text segues between episodes. With the release of Doom, millions of users installed the shareware version on their computer, and ID Software quickly began making $100,000 daily. According to PC Data, which tracks sales in the United States, by April 1998 Doom's shareware edition had yielded 1.36 million units sold and $8.74 million in revenue in the United States. This led PC Data to declare it the country's 4th best-selling computer game for the period between January 1993 and April 1998. In 1994, PC Gamer UK named Doom the 3rd best computer game of all time. I hope this video was useful for you and helped you immerse yourself in nostalgia or learn about new games that you have not played yet, but are worth playing. Next time we will talk about technological progress and best games in 1994. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss the latest video. See you in the next video. Bye bye.